Reddit, what is the most f-ked up thing you've witnessed another person do? I lived next to a family who hired an Indonesian maid. The kid in that family would physically and verbally abuse the maid every day. She kicked the maid, pinched her, scratched her, pulled her hair, poked her using a fork, called her stupid, etc. The parents did nothing to intervene. My family eventually decided to call the authorities. Edit. This kid is of the same age as me. She was also a compulsive liar. And also very gullible. I remember she once saw Superman and thought she could fly as well. I had to stop her from trying to do so. She has now grown up to become a nurse. So I suppose that she no longer has abusive tendencies. Or at least I hope so. She still is a compulsive liar though. This breaks my heart. My family got a maid when I was born. She was so sweet and kind. She treated me like I was her son. I loved her as much as I love my mother. If you've ever watched The Help, Emma Stone's maid was like my maid. I miss her. I was at a party in college and some idiot tried to sell a significant amount of coke that was significantly diluted with lavender smelling baby powder. The buyers kicked his ass in the front yard and by the end of it he was on his knees, face bloodied, basically begging for mercy. One of the buyers finished him off by kicking him in the face while he was on his knees. To be more specific, he got a running start and tried to put the sole of his shoe through the kid's face. Like a horizontal stomp. It was graphic. Positive note to end it if anyone cares. Someone took him to the hospital. He gave up all of his possessions to the person that took him and promptly checked himself into rehab that night. A dude pissed in a water bottle at Lollapalooza and after waiting 2 hours in the August heat, he threw it up in the air with no cap on it, showering his piss all over all the people waiting for Rage Against the Machine to start. I wanted to murder him. This will probably pale in comparison to whatever else will end up on this thread, but still. FCK that guy. I was there. Pee in my eyes indeed. FCK that guy. FCKU I won't pee where you tell me. I once watched a girl light a cigarette, flip her headphones up over her head and onto her ears, and walk straight into an oncoming train. I was 14. That's what I call going out in style. While stopped at a red light on a bus full of students, a homeless man waved to the bus from the sidewalk. He then turned around, dropped his pants and shit on the curb. This was on a crowded street in broad daylight. He had the biggest smile on his face. You can't tell me you don't feel relieved after a massive plopper that makes you feel light as a feather. I didn't witness it personally, but my sister's friend did. She was 5 at the time. I was 8. This kid from our village kicked our cat with all his might. Unfortunately, this demolished several vertebrae in our cat's lower back, thus paralyzing its hindquarters. The poor thing dragged himself on his front legs to our home. My mother took him to the vet, and there was nothing he could do but to put him to sleep. When I heard the news, I walked close to this kid's home and waited for him to come out. When he did, I beat him up as hard as an 8-year-old can do, and topped it off by throwing some rocks in his face. He bled. I'm not a violent man, but this kid deserved to bleed a bit. Edit. Thanks for the replies. A friend witnessed a guy take a scoop of vomit from a urinal in a nightclub toilet and slurp it out of his hands. Edit. The vomit may not have been his own. This isn't all that f-ked up, but it was certainly weird. I was going to take a piss at something like 4 in the morning, and when I went into dorm bathroom I could hear someone making noises. I went to the other side of the bathroom, it's U-shaped, and saw some guy slouched over a urinal. Specifically, he had one of his hands pressed against the left side of his nose while he violently shot blood out of the other nostril into the urinal. It was totally covered in blood. In fact, all 2 of our urinals were covered in blood. And there was blood on the mirrors and in the sinks. I decided I didn't really need to go pee and just left. Cocaine is a hell of a drug. When I was a kid, I saw an old man taking advantage of a girl with Down syndrome on a train. He was sticking his tongue in her mouth and had his hand down her pants. Also, I watched my brother-in-law kill his pet parrot with a hammer because he didn't want to pay its vet bill. I didn't personally witness this, but I'll share anyway. My girlfriend and her mom got into a really heated argument one day, and it ended up with her mom snapping her dog's neck and then throwing the dog's lifeless body across the room. My GF blacked out, and ever since that I have lost all respect for her mom. Maybe you should wait to hear her side of the story before you get all judgmental. You know. I mean, who among us hasn't brutally murdered a beloved pet in front of its owner to get a point across? One of my clients I was teaching has Down syndrome. I was teaching him math, so he went to the cashier with a $20 bill and he was buying a Coke. The cashier gave him back pennies. I decided to tell his manager I was shocked. I saw two dudes run into the McDonald's I was eating in, smash a bottle on a guy's heads and start fighting his startled friends. The friends promptly beat the ever-loving FCK out of the attackers with their dining chairs and the attackers fled. The worst part? The guy who got bottled then began yelling, with blood pouring from his mutilated ear, who the FCK were they. It had been a random attack. All at like 6 in the morning. What? Saw a guy lying down in the middle of a very busy one-way street. People were just honking and yelling at him. At one point, two guys got out of their car, grabbed the guy and threw him aside. As soon as the first car started moving, the guy just threw his legs right in front of it, and the car ran over them. I have a crazy neighbor who, if she suspects you did not clean up your dog's poop, rub poop all over the handle of your front door. When I was around 8, my friend and I would catch bugs and race them on the sidewalk. One day, I had a caterpillar and sat it down to watch it go. However, its skin, or whatever they have, got caught on a snag in the concrete. And as it was moving, its skin came off entirely and it kept moving a bit with no skin until it eventually stopped moving and turned into a disgusting gooey mess. I've been terrified of pretty much all bugs ever since. The caterpillar was trying to go the distance. Working in hospitality, we see a lot of things. One lady took a tea under her table at a work dinner. One guy walked into an empty room and tea. Quite often get people pissing around the sides of the room. In regards to sexual things, we get a lot of hookups. People showing up with one person and leaving with someone else. People finger F-king on dance floor. Found pair of panties once on the floor after an event. Yes, they were wet. We also had a lady die at work a few years ago, before I started there. She was drunk and tried sliding down the stair rail. Fell and hit her head. Quite frankly, read working at a hospital at first. I was like, what kind of F-king hospital is that? After reaching the second paragraph. I used to have a job where I was on the road a lot. While I was gone, my ex-wife started beating the crap out of our oldest daughter. Like black and blue bruises. Tying her up and locking her in the closet. Etc. She was mental. I now have papers to prove that. She went to great lengths to hide the abuse. But I eventually found out. Oddly enough, her own mother found out and confronted her about it. She never even suspected me. Because she knows her daughter and knows how f***ed up she is. Finding out about that also helped me discover that when I am mind-splittingly pissed off, like when you hurt one of my kids, I can pick up a 180-pound woman by the neck with one hand. I got full custody. Did you see the red? I always thought it was a myth. Until it happened to me. All of a sudden I came to and I had thrown some furniture around and my sister was dragging me away from my mother. Good times. I'm glad you got full custody. I used to work as a youth worker in some very deprived areas of Manchester, UK in the late 90s. Lots of drugs. Lots of crime. Knew a girl, aged about 8, who suddenly disappeared one day. After about a week, we headed to her house to make sure she was okay. She wasn't there. Her father was. Her junkie father who had sold her for crack. He couldn't understand why this was bad. Just kept saying but I needed it. I needed it. Apostrophe. We got her back. He went to jail. Stopped my friend from killing himself. Opened the bathroom door to see him sitting on the edge of the bathtub. Wrists slit. Blood everywhere. He wrote on the walls and floor with it. PTSD sucks. Edit. There seems to be some confusion about the PTSD part. I have PTSD because of it. He didn't do it because of PTSD. I saw a man at a fish show puking into a large cup and then drinking it. Puke. Drink. Puke. Drink. His friend explained he did not want to lose the drugs he had ingested. I didn't really witness the person do this pass, but I went to a party one Saturday night in college and met a cute girl on the drunk bus that night. We had talked about traveling and whatnot and later got drunk food as well. That following Monday I saw bodies of murdered Virginia Tech students being carried out on stretchers from Norris Hall. Including hers. I was in Madagascar and a woman and child who were starving. The child did not look long for this world. Came up to the porch of the NGO I was working at looking for her husband who worked as a groundskeeper at the building. The woman said she was his most junior wife and he had stopped providing for her and her child. We brought the man in as we were feeding the woman and the young child and he acknowledged that she was right. But he would not even look at her or the child. Who did not even have the energy to brush flies away from its eyes. I wrestled a knife away from a friend of mine as he attempted to stab himself. He had just returned from Iraq. And proceeded to get very drunk on a night out to a hockey game. On the bus ride home. He had hallucinations. And thought he was in Iraq again. Tried to pick up sand. Tried to carry his imaginary gun. The whole 9 yards. Eventually. He got him home. And he went upstairs. He talked a lot about killing himself. So myself and his parents went to empty his room of weapons. While doing so, he grabbed a knife. And tried to lay on his bed and stab himself in the stomach and chest. I wrestled the knife away from him and exited the room. His best friend, who was with us the entire time, and also an Iraq war vet, was sitting in the stairwell bawling his eyes out. It is for reasons like this that I will never ever join the armed force. And never ever enter war. While driving on I-70 east of Indianapolis, I stopped at a rest area to urinate. And there was a line 5-6 deep for a urinal. This guy, likely in his mid-late 70s, dressed like a colorblind golfer, finishes. Flushes the urinal and casually walks over to the sink with his penis hanging out. Turns on the water. Leans in and washes his penis. He then puts it away and walks out like nothing out of the ordinary happened. The guy in front of me in line turns to me and asks, "Did that just really f***ing happen?" Full stop. TL. Doctor, I use the other sink. While leaving the bar one night I came out to see my friend with 4 guys stomping on his head. So I ran over and got in the middle of it and took them away from attacking him and onto me. I ended up with minor cuts, bruises and a torn ligament in my hand. The doctors and cops said if I hadn't have done what I did so quickly he would have either died or had major brain damage. Thankfully he's just fine, no permanent damage, and the scumbags who attacked him are all in prison. TL. DR. Saved my friend's life by forcing his attackers to attack me instead. 8 years old, first day going to school in Lagos, Nigeria in 1983. I saw 2 policemen burning a man at the side of the main road in a stack of tires. My dad told me he was dead already, but later I found out that's just what they did with criminals because, well, it's Africa and that's what they call justice out there. A new dad drowned his newborn son in the sink in their hospital room. A mother boiling her baby in a pot. Edit. And now my top comment is about a boiled baby. Should have seen that one coming. While driving. Saw a muscular looking dude pull a girl out of a car by her hair and start wailing on her. I was alone. So I would have gotten the shit kicked out of me or worse. So I pulled over and called the cops. Don't know if anything came of it. But I was shaking with rage for several hours afterward. About 10 years ago. This kid ran over 5 people going like 60 miles per hour in his sob on a street with heavy foot traffic. On purpose. 4 of the 5 people were killed instantly. He then proceeded to get out of his car and start screaming that he was the angel of death. And started fighting people on the street. I saw an old dude wiping his ass against the wall to clean his sh*t. Did you make eye contact? A group of kids I went to high school with filmed one of their friends beating animals to death with things like brass knuckles, frying pans, and crowbars. There was the only one guy out of the group that actually did the beating, but the rest of the crew filmed and laughed. He loved it. He was proud of it. They walked around school showing the videos. The only one that I saw was a video of him petting a dog in the street and talking really nice to it. Then all of a sudden bashing this dog in the face with brass knuckles while holding it by the collar. He hit it repeatedly until it shook violently while unconscious and then died. So nobody did anything about this ever? I was with my buddies fishing on the shores of the Chattanooga River. Some black kids were fishing on the shore. Doing pretty well. We talked to them a little, usual fisherman stuff. They were about 16 years old. Some time passed and we're doing pretty well ourselves. All in the sudden this boat comes around the corner. Like a souped up pontoon with a big loud motor. These skinheads come around the corner and drive right up to the boys and start yelling at them. Hey you FCK and FCKS. Imma get off this boat and come hang your FCK in asses. On and on and on. I could not believe my eyes. To this day I have never seen such a horrible treatment of people as that. TL. DR racism. Edit. OMG I'm an idiot. On the shores of the Chattahoochee. In S. Carolina about 7 years ago. Ugh. Sorry about that. So I rode the light rail downtown this weekend. And I am walking back to grab the train back home. And a smaller Asian dude is in front of me. I look up and there is a homeless man pants all the way down pooping by a bus stop. The Asian man and I both are now walking with our heads down trying not to look. And all of a sudden the Asian man sneezes as we are walking past this public pooper. The homeless man you not looks at the other guy walking in front of me dead in the eye. And says cover your mouth when you sneeze. As he is shitting on the sidewalk. What? Edit. My most upvoted comment is about a public shitter. Edit 2. Portland. Oregon. Edit 3. Apparently there is a lot of public poopers in the states. I like to pretend it's just one guy and he's a serial shitter. I'm appalled by the Asian guy's lack of manners. I know a guy that put a kitten in the microwave. How the FCK this guy has any friends and ever got a girlfriend? I have no clue. Once caught a moth FK using his own previously used spoon to take mac and cheese from a buffet line. I saw some random drunk guy kick a stray dog square in the jaw. And the poor thing yelped incredibly loudly. I guess a lot of people might think of this as no biggie or that I've been sheltered. But as an animal lover it hurt. This is when you are allowed to go kick the drunk guy square in the jaw. I was gonna tell a story about how a drunk friend kicked in a local shop window for no reason. Working as an EMT. I watched a nurse in the hospital. We delivered an elderly woman to kill her with a pen light. She coded out in transit. We worked on her for about 45 minutes. Got to the hospital. Transferred her to a bed. Then all of a sudden she groaned loudly and regained consciousness. As soon as she sat up, one of the nurses trying to discern her level of orientation went to check her reaction to light. Then, bam. The light hitting her eyes dropped her instantly. She lost all pulse rhythm and brain activity. And basically died right away. It was pretty disheartening as it was my second night as an EMT and I had worked my ass off trying to save her. She was the first person I ever saw pass away. Not a good feeling. I saw a woman after she was thrown from the vehicle she was riding in. Her husband and her were arguing as the husband drove them down the freeway. I think she wanted out and opened the door. Instead of stopping, he sped up and kicked her out the door. She probably didn't die instantly. But the several cars that ran over her assured her passing. The largest piece of her I could distinguish was a shredded torso. I could see ribs. No head. Incidentally, I saw one of her ears a few feet in front of me. The husband pulled over and waited for the cops. And when they put him in cuffs, he was saying how he was glad she was dead.